What's up? Welcome in. Special Tuesday edition of GC Live. He is Chris Clark. I am Wes Mitchell. Thanks for joining us. We'll give everybody a little bit of time to hop on because I know on y'all's end, I did not do a great job of sort of putting it out there exactly what time we're going to be on and didn't have my links set either. So going to be definitely a show about the people. We'll get your questions in and let you sort of steer the show. Again, I'm Wes. He's Chris. This show is brought to you, as always, by our good buddy at Clint Hammond at Mortgage Network. Check him out, clinthammond.com, 803-771-6933. Or if you prefer just to go online, you can, of course, do that and maybe shoot Clint an email, chammond@mortgagenetwork.com. He is, of course, the branch manager of our Columbia Mortgage Network, right across from Dreher High School. So if you're in the area, you can actually just stop by, tell Clint what's up, and he'll get you hooked up with a mortgage, whether you are an experienced investor or a first-time home buyer. Never a better time to buy a house right now. Chris, what's up, man?
What's going on, man? Good to be here. We're coasting in hot, coming in hot on this show today. Lots going on. I'm catching up from a couple days, sort of just spending a little time with the family out of town, getting back in the swing of things.
Yeah, here we are. So, I figure at this point, not a lot of breaking news since we did the last show. So maybe we use this time sort of to catch up a little bit, dive back into some details potentially. Going to talk a little bit of recruiting and maybe talk some quarterbacks again. I know we talked some quarterbacks last week. Since that time, I guess it's not really a fresh new offer anymore, but since that time, South Carolina has extended an offer to Drew Allar, a kid that very, very talented quarterback, and we'll dive into him a little bit later on. What's up to everybody in the chat? Jeremy, Daniel, Miss Lynn, JEE, and the sun is shining. I honestly thought there was that little sort of deal in the back of my mind where I was like, we may never see the sun again, but the sun is out. It is shining in my window right now. And speaking of windows, Chris, there's not a window behind you anymore. So
nice segue. Very well done.
Is it possible we're not seeing the beginnings yet, but are we seeing sort of the setup for a possible Chris background?
You're seeing the evolution of the background. We have gone from window to now
to the wall.
Yes, not sure what Sherwin-Williams brand this is, but we got that. Now we have to figure out, obviously right now, limited space right here. So right now we could do dead socksy socks pinned against the wall. We could do that. We could do something small here. We might go out a little bit, change the view up. We'll have to see. But yes, the process is evolving and as we speak. And so at some point, there will be actual materials or some such back behind me. But I have graduated, I'm proud to say. And so hopefully everybody enjoys the gray instead of the window.
And I'm telling you, for the right price, if anybody out there owns a business, I can promise you for the right price, you can have a logo right over Chris's head.
I will write it on the wall if you want me to. We can write it. We can do a sticker. We can do a banner. It really doesn't matter. I'll hold it up the whole time if we have to. It really doesn't matter. So yeah, hit us up and let us know.
And so JE says that looks like agreeable gray. I don't know if that's a real,
how about
that a real thing?
No, JE, I don't know if this is agreeable gray, but that is really funny you said that because we just redid our downstairs bathroom and it is agreeable gray.
So that's a real thing.
It is a real thing. Very popular color, is my understanding. And so we did go with that downstairs. I feel like this might be a different color. And of course, as we know, the light hits it a little bit differently. It looks a little bit darker maybe here than it actually is. Yes.
Yeah. It seems like you see gray in a lot of like modern looking houses these days. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. It seems like there's a lot of gray.
It's now an interior design show.
Yes. Anyway, y'all. All right, we're getting hopefully the people that know us and are on the show all the time are still sticking around. The people that are like just joining in for the first time are like, get me off. What am I listening to? What am I watching? Anyway, we're going to talk a little 2022 recruiting, and I think, Chris, I get the impression that it was kind of a whirlwind at first. You know, Shane Beamer's trying to put the staff together. Then the staff is in, but there's changes, and you're kind of in that point where you're trying to sort of fix the 2021 class and finish the 2021 class. And leading up to that second signing day, that sort of had to be the focus. That had to be the biggest focus, at least. You're always looking ahead, don't get me wrong, but that had to be priority number one. Now, I think the staff has sort of been able to sit down, get settled in. Apparently, watching probably thousands of hours of film from the number of offers that have gone out recently. But I think this is pretty normal. This, to me, is each individual coach sort of setting their own board at their position and getting offers out. You know, I mean, if you have one coaching change, like a different position coach, he comes in and he sort of sets his board. Well, you have an entire new staff coming in. So you have that going on at every single position. And you have guys reaching out to their areas, touching base with their prior connections, making new connections. And that is probably the easiest way to explain why we have had this flurry of offers, maybe the last 3-4, probably last month or so, really.
Yeah, great point. I mean, part of it's just trying to catch up a little bit, you know, the craziness of the transition period. And I mean, look, everybody's to some degree is dispensing offers now. It's the off season. The 21 class is just finished. Maybe a little bit more so for South Carolina with a brand new staff coming on board, right? But one trend that we have seen that you hit on, Wes, was some of these prior connections that have led to new offers. You know, I think a couple off the top of my head. The last story I published this morning on Gamecock Central, and one that'll be coming this afternoon or tomorrow. You know, Peter Kikwata from Maryland was a guy that Justin Stepp offered at Arkansas, new at Arkansas. We'll have a story coming with him soon, and sort of just doubling back to, you know, renew the interest, let him know, hey, still like you, still interested in you. I'm at South Carolina now. We've seen Stepp with several of those, you know, guys in Texas, guys from all over West, started, of course, in the Palmetto State and worked out. Another one that we ran this morning on an athlete, talented athlete out of Alabama, from Fairfield, Alabama, you know, that was actually a guy that Stepp had talked to at Arkansas as well, had talked to at South Carolina. And then Torian Gray ended up offering him because he could play on either side of the ball. So we're seeing a lot of those things with, you know, guys that at their previous stop, they were familiar with some kids, had some connections with some kids, and now they're sort of doubling back. And of course, there's new guys that have been emerging too, that just in the course of watching prospects in the Southeast and all around the country that they found. But has, like you said, man, has definitely been a flurry. Definitely can tell that the staff is sort of working down the checklist, so to speak, of different guys. We knew, for instance, at quarterback, that South Carolina, you know, they offered Tanner Bailey out of Alabama. We knew that they were looking at Taven Jackson from Indiana, Drew Allar from Ohio. Ended up offering both of those guys in succession, just sort of working through those steps. And now, you know, the board isn't clear by any means for 2022 because there's so many guys with offers. It'll narrow down from there. But we've definitely seen a lot of activity, you know, from that 22 class in the way of offers.
Yeah, and I'm very curious, Chris. I think there is an interesting aspect to all of this that basically has never been the case before. On top of the not being able to take visits right now aspect, but you have for the first time, I believe ever, certainly in modern recruiting, you're gonna have a spring season for some of these places. So, and for South Carolina, you have that right up the road in North Carolina. There's several guys that I'm sure are on South Carolina's recruiting board and are known sort of players, known prospects that they're interested in, maybe even really like, but you maybe are waiting just a little bit longer because, I mean, those seasons start, Chris, I think it's next week. If not the week after, but I think it's next week. Those seasons starting very soon. So if you're sort of you're wanting to know who's made that big jump. And a lot of times you do see a jump from, sophomore to junior year or junior to senior year. In the case of these guys, you're getting a preview of their senior years, some of them, but it's right now because you missed getting the last time you saw these kids, some of them, was when they were sophomores. So they didn't have an actual junior season. This will count as their junior season. So you're getting sort of a preview of their senior year, or maybe you're getting, in some cases, a preview of the junior year. So I think it'll be interesting to see with these 2022s, those are the rising seniors, how many guys have made that big jump, and then do we see an offer spree in the state of North Carolina with South Carolina? Because we know, I've made this, and it's not a secret. Everybody in this industry says this, but North Carolina has to be a key for South Carolina. And right now, Mac Brown is making life difficult on everybody in that state. So for me, it's very important for South Carolina to continue to try to build some inroads there, but it'll be something to watch this spring that generally is not an aspect that we're watching because there's no spring football. So I think that'll be fun to see which guys pop up in the next couple months.
Yeah, North Carolina, Virginia, some other states sort of in that Northeast, that DMV sort of region that we know Shane Beamer has a lot of connections in, plans on being active in. And so obviously there's guys that they've already offered, whether it's from North Carolina, Virginia, but like you said, man, some guys in the 22, 23, 24 classes, we've seen offers go out for all those classes recently. You would have to think that there's going to be more forthcoming. And the spring season makes things very interesting in recruiting, makes it interesting on the field. Wes, just remember the other day when we're talking about on-field stuff, Gamecocks season opening opponent, Eastern Illinois, set to kick off their season, their 2020 season, on Sunday. They play this Sunday, coming off a 1-11 campaign last year, obviously pushed their season to the spring in their league, and they're playing an abbreviated 7-game schedule. I think they finish up April 11th. So really going to be fascinating to see, how that affects things for Eastern Illinois and other programs like that who are playing a spring season that, of course, is last year's season technically, and then springing forward to this year, how they're going to handle that. But lots of implications, for the spring football period. Another thing to sort of keep an eye on, look out for in the coming weeks is just what the NCAA, I think, is going to do with in-person recruiting. We know that there's a recommendation that's been put on the table to extend the dead period again until the end of May. Seems a little ridiculous. Lots of people pretty upset about it. We'll see what happens. As of right now, it's through April, right? And so that is basically, eliminated a lot of, all the in-person recruiting activities until then. But will they modify things? Will they reopen recruiting? I don't know. You'd have to think, Wes, that things are going to return to some level of normalcy this summer, this season. But so far that hasn't happened. So lots of really interesting stuff going on in terms of timing and in terms of the logistics of recruiting now in the 22 class and beyond.
Yeah, not to go all up into stuff with the virus, but you got to think that the sort of vaccine and how many people are able to get vaccinated and how readily available that is, if they're able to sort of match the plans for that moving forward and actually get the vaccine in enough arms, to me, probably will be a huge factor in all this stuff. Are you going to be able to have fans at a practice or two? Are you going to be able to have a spring game like normal?
Yep.
Are recruits going to be able to be on campus? I know you really don't want to go through another off season where these guys are not able to visit at all. And, here's the thing, man. We know the transfer portal transfer portal would have been a huge deal regardless. But I'm telling you, this thing is going to we're pouring gasoline on this fire because it's going to be from both ends. And what I mean by that is you are going to have kids that just first and foremost, imagine let's take athletics out of it. Imagine you're going off to a school. Maybe it's not the local school. You're going 2 or 3 states away. Imagine you're a Florida kid going to Ohio State. You've never stepped foot in the state of Ohio in your life. So we can take athletics out of it. There's going to be a lot of homesick kids who chose a school without ever stepping foot on campus. And here's the thing. College football, I'm sure there's some really glorious aspects of it. And, being the guy, being big man on campus, being a superstar, sure, it's great. Get a lot of girls on campus, right? But if you're your freshman year, it's not easy what these kids go through. I mean, all the work they put in behind the scenes to get to that point that most of us never see, it's not easy at all. So, I believe you're going to have guys transferring at an unbelievable rate just based on that alone. Then, Chris, let's take into account there were no spring evaluations last year. There were no summer camps for evaluations last year. And no one being the coaches was able to go to high school football games and evaluate in person. So I believe you're going to have missed evaluations on both ends in that you're going to have guys playing at Power 5 schools that were really good earlier in their high school careers and never got better. Mm-hmm. They're going to be in the transfer portal, transferring down. And then you're going to have more. We're always going to have these things, but there's going to be more of them. More, your Jordan Strongs, guys that start out raw players with upside. Kid walks on at Georgia State as a freaking defensive back. And now he's playing edge rush for South Carolina in the SEC. You're always going to have those, but I believe that you're going to have an unmeasurable amount of those situations moving forward. And it's going to be tough on the kids. It's going to be tough on the coaches. It's going to be hard to build a culture when you're going to have guys in and out and in and out. So, dude, throw in name, image, and likeness. The next 3 to 4 years is going to be a mess for college football.
It is. And, in the coaching industry, to sort of put some of these little storylines in compartments, we are seeing more and more college coaches, Wes, come to covet NFL jobs because they're going, recruiting the way it is now, this name, image, likeness stuff, that it's really going to complicate things. And so it's not as much about coaching ball as it is being a marketer and a brander. And some guys like that. Others who just want to coach ball are more like, let's move to the NFL. So those jobs have become more coveted. But you're right. There's so many different factors that are coming up in these college football programs. And, you hit on name, image, likeness. I mean, we could do an entire show about that and what it may look like, what the implications are going to be. I think one thing we're going to see is most kids and their families, their high school coaches, trainers, and all these different people are going to want their question is going to be, how can I get a piece of this? The answer is, for most people, it's not going to mean much, but that's not going to be what they think. You know what I mean? Like most kids coming out of high school, if they're signing to play college football, a lot of them, we talk to enough of them, Wes, and there's nothing wrong with this, but a lot of them think, I'm going to go to the NFL. Most of them don't. It's just the reality. It's just the statistics. Whatever may happen, so maybe they get injured, maybe they don't find the right fit, they don't develop. There's all sorts of different factors. I think name, image, likeness is going to be the same, where the schools that do well with it as a recruiting tool are going to have these things in place, where there's partnering with the firm, coming up with a cool name for their internal program. And a lot of it's just going to be part of this like facilities arms race, where it's just who can build the biggest, the most new the most shiny. That's going to be the deal, I think, with name, image, likeness. Who's got the coolest sounding program? We're going to brand you. We're going to market you. We're going to partner with Jeremy Darlow. We're going to do all these different things. For most people, it's not going to mean a lot. You look at NFL rosters, 53-man roster in the NFL. Most guys don't get much in the way of marketing. If you're the special teams player for the Carolina Panthers, you're not out here getting endorsement deals left and right. At the local level, some are going to get some in college, but the guys who are superstars in college football are going to gobble up anything national. There's only so many spots to go around. But man, I mean, like I said, I could go on and on about that and the potential implications, but it really is, with the transfer portal, with recruiting and marketing, branding, with NLI, so many different factors that are coming up in college football now. Man, I find myself thinking a lot about how different it is now, us covering this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. J.E. saying you can always tell when I'm reading the comments. Absolutely. You guys keep it interesting. I'll give you that. Let's talk before we go into 2022 and some specifics. Let's hit on what could be the final 2021 and South Carolina potentially going into the transfer portal again with a senior grad transfer defensive back, Carlin Splatel. This is a kid that's at Assumption College, someone that has really sort of burst onto the scene here the last couple of weeks or so. Chris, from what I was told, Coastal Carolina was really the first sort of bigger school to hop in on this kid, and I believe thought they had a steal. I don't think anybody was really tracking him a whole lot or knew much about him. But then the film starts circulating. Maybe word that Coastal's on him starts circulating. Some bigger schools start asking around. South Carolina comes in. Mississippi State comes in. Gamecocks have offered. Mississippi State have offered. And they actually are going to do a virtual visit with him today. It's really sort of the only choice you have these days. You can't do an actual real visit like we used to see. But virtual visit today. Looks like a decision could be coming pretty shortly after that. And, Chris, this is a guy, let's be honest, whenever people say Assumption College, they're like, wait, what? But, I turned on the film of this kid, man, and he's a bigger kid. He's got some length, not scared to hit you, has some ball skills to him. Again, I don't know. It's going to be very hard to put realistic expectations on some of these transfers because there's going to be a jump in the competition. We know that. Top end speed against SEC receivers, carrying guys down the field, stuff like that. Very, very hard to tell on film. But as far as size, some athleticism, some toughness, some physicality, I actually do think there's a lot to like about this kid. He was on, but much like Jason Brown, I found some profiles of this kid as being one of those, hey, here's an under the radar guy that could be an NFL player. Here's a guy to watch. So you're I don't know if you've watched this yet. Those of you who are watching on video as opposed to the audio stream are able to see his film right now. Chris, what are your thoughts on the kid?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting player. Again, South Carolina this cycle has to be extremely resourceful. We've talked about this really almost ad nauseum, so I'm not going to go into the whole spiel again, Wes, but just how unique these circumstances were for South Carolina, for Shane Beamer, having the early signing period right around the corner when he got the job, having the late signing period, and then just needing help at certain spots. So we've seen them hit the portal for help at several different spots and be resourceful. And this is another example. We knew, exiting sort of the two signing periods, I think we're on the same page, Wes, and thinking that, if you looked and said, okay, from a numbers standpoint, what could South Carolina really stand to add? We talked about this on a show recently, and I think we both said, hey, and if there's a dynamite proven receiver out there, maybe you go get him. But other than that, DB is what you pick for that spot. And so I think this makes a lot of sense. I don't I don't ever look at a guy just completely rule him out because of him, coming from some particular school. It's almost like the Nick Muse thing. People went nuts about William and Mary. If you recruited 25 William and Mary level guys a year in the SEC, you're going to get beat a lot, right? Same thing with Assumption football players, but they've had some guys, never had a player drafted. Carlin Spatel will maybe become the first, but they have had a few guys who have made NFL rosters and been in the NFL. And every year we see small school guys pop up. So obviously, there can be good players at this level. So the question is, did you find one? And based on, offer list, as you laid out earlier, Wes, there's some things to like about this guy. Length, range, some ball skills, physicality, good disposition in terms of his aggressiveness. It plays a need position for South Carolina where they simply need some numbers. They need some guys that can that have some talent that give them some potential depth on the back end.
Well, and Chris, as it was pointed out to me, we don't really think about things from this standpoint, but they lost so many guys at defensive back. You're literally having to bring in numbers to be able to practice, like to be able to have, enough guys on both sides there and enough depth to be able to have, a first team, a second team, and then, of course, your scout team. So the numbers there, when you talk about losing a Johnny Dixon, losing a Jamie Robinson, of course, they didn't expect to have a J.C. Horn or probably even an Izzy McQuamu back, even when the season started. But still, you start adding up the number of kids you've lost at that position. Never good to lose, 5-6 guys at one spot in one off season. So you have that to, that's a factor there. Is it fair to be like, okay, this kid's going to come in and be J.C. Horn? Absolutely not. And we're sitting here talking like South Carolina's gotten him. To be clear, he's not committed anywhere yet. Probably comes down to South Carolina and Mississippi State. From what we understand, South Carolina is, is on him pretty hard, wants him to be a part of their class, and would essentially take up that final spot that counts directly, towards 2021. But, Chris, I think there's an interesting sort of new, I don't want to say new factor, but just new discussion piece here. And that is, I've noticed people on our message board there on Gamecock Central, come sign up, by the way, use code Gamecocks, 50% off your first year. On the Insider Forum, there's this question of, okay, where are the Power 5 transfers? And South Carolina does have, Amarian Brown, Power 5 transfer. My question, though, Chris, is, are you necessarily better off just using that as your standard? Like, oh, this guy's played Power 5 ball. Because if they were already at a Power 5 school and they're transferring out, there is a reason they're leaving. So I wouldn't, or I would argue that all Power 5 guys are not created equal as far as the transfer portal goes. Now, there are some that any school in the country would love to have, particularly, at quarterback. You can be an outstanding. We've seen this. Fields was a transfer. Joe Burrow was a transfer. At quarterback, you can be a heck of a player and just be behind an older guy. We've seen that. And, every year there's going to be a handful of guys who just aren't happy and are really good and transfer out. But if you're South Carolina, you're not at the point yet where you're just getting the true 5-star type guys. So if you take that as a fact right now, are you better off taking a Power 5 guy who maybe hasn't really played at all versus playing someone who fits this other mold that we were talking about earlier with the transfer portal, in that they were probably under-recruited? I mean, just looking at the film, I can tell you this kid could have played at a bigger, quote, bigger school than Assumption. Whether or not he's an all-SEC guy, a year from now or not, I can tell you the guy got under-recruited. So are you better off going for Power 5 guys who haven't played, or going for non-Power 5 guys that have played a ton and are looking to do it on a little bit higher level? There's no easy answer to that question. It's too open-ended of a question, and every player is created different. But I don't think we should get into this thing of just saying, well, where's the Power 5 guys? That doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah, and the other thing is, look, this is still recruiting. When you're talking about the transfer portal, it's still recruiting. We've talked about this before, Wes, and that a lot of guys that enter the portal have some idea or a full idea sometimes of what they want to do. And there are different reasons. I mean, sometimes, Justin Fields of all people didn't play at Georgia. Joe Burrow didn't play. But those cases, for all of those, there's a Tate Martell. Not to pile on the guy, but like they're different scenarios. Sometimes Power 5 guys enter the portal because they need to go down a level. Sometimes guys go in the portal from a lower level because they need to go up because they're better than the level they're on. So it just depends. And so it comes down to the sort of the cornerstones of recruiting. You got to make good evaluations in it. You got to be smart, resourceful. You got to make sure you're evaluating well. Look at your needs. Trust your eyes. Put them on a player and make a good call on it. And you also, if you do have a guy that goes in the portal who's truly assessing options, you still have to go recruit him. So, look, if South Carolina lands Carlin Spatel, this would be what, number 8, Wes? Not going to land 8 Power 5 transfers. They're not. I don't know if pick an example. If the University of Georgia said for some reason we're taking 8 transfers this year, I don't know that all of them would be from Oklahoma, Miami, Texas. Like they would probably go down a level and, hey, let's take this Georgia Southern guy. J.R. Reed, who started for them a while back, was, I think, a Baylor transfer or something, or Tulsa, something like that. So they, it comes down to just still, for me, the basic tenets of recruiting, which is you got to make good evaluations, no matter, where a guy's from, what his ranking may be, whatever. Now, Carolina's not going to grab 8 guys out of the portal every year. They're not going to do that in 2022. And no, they're not going to take transfers from Assumption and Georgia State and all these places every year either. But this is just a really, really unique year where they need some guys who can come in and play. And so in some regard, you're balancing taking a guy who has college experience, albeit at a lower level, and weighing it versus what can you get from the high school or the junior college ranks. And they've done that at several spots this cycle.
Yeah, so will be interesting. And as always, man, we really find out after they come play, so it'll be a little bit earlier than, with a high school kid, you're talking 3 or 4 years. We'll know what these guys are talking 1 or 2 years, depending on eligibility and the situation they come into. But certainly will be something interesting to track. By the way, if you are listening or watching and you are a Carolina baseball fan, Gamecocks start their season this weekend against Dayton. That's at home. Hopefully we get weather like this as opposed to weather like we had the last week. I think I can go ahead and speak for Colin Taylor. I haven't asked him yet, but we're going to have him on Friday. I'm sure he'll make some time for us. We'll have Colin on to talk a bit about the baseball season, what to expect this weekend, and what to expect moving forward. But while we were doing the show here today, Mark Kingston announcing with our buddies over at the JB and Goldwater show that South Carolina will start Thomas Farr on Friday, Brandon Jordan on Saturday, and Julian Bostic on Sunday. That is South Carolina's opening weekend starting rotation for the South Carolina baseball team. So a little bit of breaking news from our buddies over there at JB and Goldwater. Of course, I do their show every Monday, and good dudes who had Kingston on, I guess, about, in the last 10, 15 minutes or so. Let's go into some 2022s, Chris. And I always think people like to hear about quarterbacks, maybe more so than any other position, because it's a glamour position. It's the position that we know it gets the blame when things go bad. It gets the love when things are going well. And clearly a position that's going to be important for South Carolina as they try to build this 2022 class. We know what happened with Gunnar Stockton, replacing him. I tend to think, man, once they get sort of rolling, that they're going to be fine with 2023. They've already got an offer out to 2024 kid in state and Jalen Davis, plenty early enough for that position at the other classes. The one you really sort of look at and say, what direction is this thing going to go? 2022. I tend to think, generally speaking, you're going to sort of have to maybe find a guy, Chris, that maybe some spots start filling up at other places, and you sort of have to find that right spot because a lot of teams are only taking one. And you got to be very, very, again, resourceful about finding a dude who can play, knowing you're a little bit behind through no fault of your own because you're a new coaching staff. A guy that I know it seems South Carolina's high on. Chris, I know you're high on him. I'm high on him. Very impressive kid that South Carolina offered. He's among this group that they've offered recently. You mentioned some of them earlier in the show, but Drew Alar, someone that, Chris, I would say once again, we talked about this last week, fits that description of being the guy who can make these off-platform throws and really can deliver the football from about any angle watching him on film.
This guy is someone that he's blown up in terms of offers recently, and you can see why. I think this is a guy that's going to eventually be talked about in terms of pro potential a lot because he checks just all these boxes, Wes. I mean, he just looks like a pro guy. He's big in the pocket. He looks like who's the kid, Josh Allen or something. I mean, in terms of stature. I mean, he's 6'5". I'm not comparing him to Josh Allen, guys, but
yeah, you are.
Yeah, instant first round pick. But no, he's 6'4", 6'5". He obviously has size in the pocket. He's a big kid, and his arm talent is really off the charts. You see him. I mean, he can step up and make your prototypical throws. But look at that right there. Moving to his left.
We got to run that one back. Hold on.
Run that one back. I mean, and you see him here navigating the pocket with his eyes downfield. Really impressive. So he can stand back and just make throws like this, but he can also make, like you said, Wes, those off-platform throws where he's throwing across his body. He's throwing three-quarters. He's throwing sidearm and sort of climbing the pocket and navigating around the pocket.
Here it is.
Really, really impressive. Yeah, that's ridiculous. Jeez. I mean, he puts it right in the guy's breadbasket, throwing sidearm, moving to his left as a right-hander. So really, really impressive, in terms of the physical tools for Drew Alar. And we figured once we heard of South Carolina's interest in this guy that it was probably just going to be a matter of time. But he's blown up lately as too. Don't have a great sense, Wes, in terms of the chances for South Carolina to pull this guy. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of competition. I see that competition probably just increasing from here, not decreasing. But you're right. I mean, in terms of the timing, man, we broke it down last show. Quarterbacks commit early, sometimes 2 years out. And so the one positive that you have said over and over on Gunnar Stockton, and there's not a positive from that except for if you're going to decommit, don't do it late. Let South Carolina sort of get in on some other targets and start building, sort of laying that groundwork. And so whether it's Tanner Bailey from Alabama, Taven Jackson from Indiana, or this kid, Drew Alar from Ohio, that's something that they're able to do.
I think we talk a lot about sports people talk a lot more and more about guys playing two sports and, in high school and how that prepares them for the next level, prepares them for success. I don't know what Drew Alar's background is for other sports, but man, it seems like you just have more and more shortstop type kids. He's obviously bigger than your typical shortstop, but the ability to throw the football from these arm slots and the way he moves his feet just reminds me of a shortstop throwing the football across the diamond. And that's something, again, we've talked about this. You didn't used to really see that even being mentioned as a positive. In some ways it was mentioned. I mean, Steve Spurrier would be like, no, we ain't going this route. We're not doing this. But more and more that is mentioned as a positive, and you can see why, man. You have to, in today's game, you're going to spread out. You have to be able to move around in the pocket a little bit, but more importantly, you have to be able to deliver the football with a quickness and with guys around you and from different arm slots in order to keep the ball from getting batted down. So, like you said, we'll see. Who knows if South Carolina's got a great shot with this kid or not, but you can sort of see what they're based on these offers so far. Chris, I think you sort of just get a feeling already of kind of what they're looking for. They're aiming high at this position, I think.
good to aim high. You definitely want to try to aim high and take a swing, at a big time guy, some big time guys, and see how it shakes out. Again, we know that South Carolina is in the mix to some degree with Tanner Bailey from Alabama. He's told us as much. You look at some of the other programs involved, it figures that they'll have at least a decent shot there. Don't know as much on Jackson or Alar. One reason is just the geography, Wes. I mean, Indiana's done a good job on in-state kids under Tom Allen. He's built that program very well. He'll be a huge priority for them. Drew Alar, being from Ohio, you got Ohio State there. You've got, Penn State. You've got a lot of other schools that reach into Ohio. So, South Carolina reaching in. We don't really know yet, long term what the staying power is, but certainly a trio of impressive guys. And for me, Wes, when I look at these guys, I really, really like Alar. I mean, I think his ability to throw with all the different arm slots, just the arm talent, the tools that he brings, to me are off the charts. And I think there's a lot to work with there.
Yeah, Kyle likes your Josh Allen comparison. I actually really do too. You're not big on the comparisons, Chris. I know that's not you don't enjoy them, but that one
was that
pretty solid, I think. Very good. I like that one.
Don't ask me to do more though.
Well, dude, when the difficult part is when you get put on the spot for a comparison.
Right.
Some guys, it's just like, oh, that guy reminds me of this. It like comes to you. But the hard ones are when you're like, hey, who's this guy remind you of? I don't know. Like off the top of my head, how many people have you watched film of at this point since you've been doing this? I mean, it's very hard to come up with a name just off top, to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Anyway. Josh Allen, just pulling up his rival's profile, 5.42 star out of Reedley, California, Reedley Community College, 6'5", 215, committed to Wyoming, carried an Eastern Michigan offer as well. So a few people missed on Josh Allen. Hey, you remember, Josh Allen was very polarizing during the draft process. You remember that? Because people would say, this guy, he's toolsy. He's got a huge arm. But, what will he, they also showed the bad plays, the bad throws, the interceptions, whatever. They looked at the numbers. Why isn't he doing more? But he's turned out to be a good player, man. That's a case of a guy who had a lot of tools that developed, those tools in his flourish.
Well, and dude, I don't think the guy had ever thrown much over 50% as far as completions until this past season. So even now, as great as he was this year, is there going to be a regression to the mean sort of next year? Does it does it come back to earth? As we've talked about recently, things tend to even out. So, you may be flying high if you're him this past year, but does he come back to earth? Do people find answers? He is still prone sometimes just to throw the football up, I feel like. But the physical skills, good grief. Man, a 2-star though, that's crazy. You don't even hardly see 2 stars anymore, I feel like. It's almost all 3 stars. But anyway, that's going to about close it out for us. I do want to talk. I'm scheduled, Chris, to talk to this kid here shortly, one we've been tracking at the running back position, Jalen Glover, an interesting name, a kid out of Florida. He is a 6A player of the year in Florida and someone that Des Kitchings had South Carolina in really good shape with. I think that speaking of rivals, I think our rivals guys, they ran an article here recently where they're hearing that South Carolina maybe is still the favorite for Jalen Glover. It's a kid, like I said, really like Des a lot, but Ontario Hardesty has been in touch, and someone I think worth tracking as potentially being one of the running backs in this class for South Carolina with 2022.
Well, that one play that you just showed on the touchdown run, Wes, I think that checked the boxes that Ontario Hardesty was talking about the other day that he was looking for. Making a guy miss. We saw him stick his foot in the ground, cut up field, just leave a defender behind. We saw the burst. We saw that of getting in the open field. And we also saw finishing the run, a couple guys diving at his legs, and he just sort of shrugged them off. And Jaylon Glover, man, I mean, he fits that bigger back mold. He's not a big plotter. He can certainly run. He's got some moves. But you look at how his lower body's built. I mean, just watch him on film, guys bouncing off of him. His thighs are bigger around than I am. So he's an impressive dude. And when you play at that level and you're the player of the year offensively down in Florida, you're doing some things right. He for his size, he sort of glides and he can run through and around people. So definitely like Jaylon Glover as a prospect and a guy certainly to watch for South Carolina in this class.
And as you're seeing, got some down the field ball skills. Catches the ball pretty naturally, and these guys are struggling to square him up in this film. Got some burst, as you see there, and like you said, man, I mean he's not the tallest kid, which running back is one of those spots. It seems like other positions we sort of fall in love with height at times, and for good reason in some cases. But running back, you can really play well and not be a super tall kid. Sometimes it even works to your advantage. I think he's really in that like 5'8", 5'9" type mold, but just is muscular. As you see here again, can make people miss, bounces off people, and has that low center of gravity. So he's very difficult to square up, combined with the fact that he's very difficult to actually get on the ground if you do square him up. And that makes for really a pretty unique little skill set there. This play right here, I might would have put that play first. They always say put your best play first. Although he had several good ones. There was one where you were talking where it was like he made two guys miss back to back, just stuck his foot in the ground and went, and then set another guy up for a move and ran by him as well. So there's quite a bit of impressive film on this tape.
Yeah, I mean, again, checks all the boxes. The runs with power, runs with pace, and really good in space or between the tackles. I think this kid will be a great addition to the class. He's probably undervalued. I don't know what it is so far. You look at the production. I don't know if there's schools, because you look at the offer list, it's good. This is an impressive offer list, but it's not like this guy's ranked as a high 4-star with a who's who of college football after him. I don't know if they're looking at the height. I don't know what it is. But when you look at this kid, for me, Wes, I mean, he checks a lot of the boxes that you look for in a running back.
Yeah, and I think we get caught up in measurables. I don't know if it's necessarily just the height, but maybe the fact that the height plus he's not that elite burner from a speed standpoint, certainly fast enough, but just not that, track burner type guy from the looks at it. And, man, I think it'll be interesting to see exactly what he weighs in at, next time he does an event or something like that. He's listed at 190 on Rivals. I think he's already a little bit bigger than that and will be one of these guys that could play at a very compact 205 or maybe even 210 or something like that. So we'll see where that goes as far as his recruitment. All right, I think that's going to about do it for today, Chris. I guess moving forward, the thing for people to watch the next couple of days will be, what happens with Carlin Splittell. Again, the kid we talked about earlier could be making an announcement in the next day or two. So we'll be tracking that. Baseball, as we said, gets started on Friday. Kyle and Taylor, of course, have complete coverage of that moving forward. Mark Kingston announcing his rotation on JB and Goldwater today. And I'm trying to think, what else do people need to know? Oh, so South Carolina, if you haven't seen it, South Carolina, Tennessee men's basketball game will be played on Wednesday at 9:00, that getting pushed back from the originally scheduled Tuesday, which is, of course, today. So make sure you're not sitting at your TV waiting on that to start tonight. Chris, what else you got, man? Anything?
Nothing else so far, man. Just pushing out a lot more content this week on Gamecock Central, continuing the Inside the Class series that we're still finishing out. I think we've released 3 parts, just sort of looking back on the 2021 class and more behind the scenes stories, inside analysis as to how things came about. So if you want that, more recruiting stories, scoop, insight coming on the Insiders Forum, make sure you check out the deal that Wes just put up. We'd love to have you. Join all the other people on the show that have joined us along the way.
Yep, try the code Gamecocks. You'll get 50% off. That's $50 off your first year on GamecockCentral.com. Appreciate everybody joining us. If you have a moment, please hit the like button. If you're on Facebook, the like button and subscribe button on YouTube. And hey, if you're on the podcast side of things, please leave us a review or at least rate the podcast and let us know how we're doing. For Chris, I'm Wes. We appreciate the support, appreciate the time as always. Next show will be Wednesday, I believe. Wednesday at noon. We'll be live. And of course, as always, you can just listen to it on the podcast. Appreciate y'all. Have a good one.